It's awesome.
Countdown.
Welcome, welcome. Excited to be here. Three guys, many games. We're really excited. I'm here with the GOAT, Vinny Sombrato, and we've got the living legend, four-time All-American, Ric Beardsley with us today. How about we get a little hand for Ric Beardsley? I have to say, I really should have, I didn't have the time, but I really should have, I needed to download some new intro music just for Rick. What do you think, Vin? What would have been
Next time, we could have played a little disco. He had the moves, Rick. And he
exactly?
definitely's got the moves.
I could have got my disco ball out. Drop that down. That would have been great. So yes, I'm excited. We're back. We're missing one of our guys. He's running around, and the craziest thing is he was up at Syracuse. That's the craziest of all, Rick. You're up in Syracuse, and Smalley doesn't ring you up. Isn't that crazy?
Disappointing. I mean, first of all, guys, thanks for having me on. This, I know I'm, the last Syracuse guy you probably want on at this point. But
True.
Seriously, Smalley comes to Syracuse, the Great White North, to watch a basketball game. I'm just down the street eating dinner, and he can't even shoot me a text. I would say, Smalls, I'd come over and meet you. Wouldn't be a problem. He got in, got out. I mean, What does he think? I couldn't VIP myself right in the Carrier Dome? Does he not understand who I am?
Well, Smalley's got a thing for a lot of years. He calls it stick and move. He moves fast, so he probably, who knows? He was
That's
on the
true.
move. He
There's
was
nothing
in and
wrong with
out.
that.
So
Q's got a big win last night. I guess that keeps them in the hunt for a spot in the ACC tournament at least.
We hope. I mean, Red Autry's done he's taken a lot of grief, right? I've known Red. He was my next door neighbor, same class, right? Coached his son Trey before he went off to Western Reserve to play hoops. So I know Red. He's got a daughter that's actually committed to play lacrosse at Syracuse. She's a senior at JD.
Nice.
I think he catches a lot of flack. It's a tough market out there. I mean, how do you make NIL money? You got to charge more ticket prices. You're talking about a community that balks at expensive ticket prices, right? I mean, So who's going to give here? So yeah, that was a good win though. I'll be honest with you, Vin, when I was listening to the game coming back from a girls box lacrosse clinic I was like, man, when they're going to blow the lead? Because they're notorious for blowing leads. But they held on the whole way, so it was great. Yeah, great win. So hopefully they'll be in. It's better when, Syracuse is in the playoffs, trust me, in all the sports.
Yeah, well, that guy Lumpkin, two things. Lumpkin, that guy's a handful.
That's my guy, by the way. You ever see him? Vin, he works hard off ball, like sets screens.
Yeah,
he barely could move a couple of weeks ago. My buddy has courtside seats, so I'm sitting there watching. I'm like, this Eddie Lampkin guy, he's like can barely run. His back was all messed up, but like he's a very selfless guy, like a 7-footer that's selfless. So I think he's great. You know what I mean? I think he's great. I love that kid. He's my favorite player on that team.
He played a great game last night. The second thing I did see, maybe on social media or something, that the Cuse, that they're trying to put together like $50 million, it said, just for money for sports, primarily, I guess, for basketball and football. But,
the self-funded NIL, right?
Yeah, they want to get a war chest. They understand. I mean, look, it's going to be an arms race now. I mean, who knows? I mean, the way the rules are with kids and, transferring left and right, I wouldn't be surprised to see some kids be in as many as 3-4 different schools over their career now.
Mm-hmm. You are correct, without a doubt.
But I hope that doesn't translate to lacrosse as much, but you could see it happening based on what a kid's role is on a team, or I mean, there's so many good schools. If a kid doesn't like where he fits in on one school, he might be out of there and go into the next one. That just might be a reality. Maybe not necessarily totally associated with any NIL money, but it could be.
I mean, I know you guys know this. There's lacrosse programs have big NILs. And they're paying players right now. They're giving guys money to stay. So, like, I know of one Division I program that's in the Big Ten. They're giving every player $5,000 just automatically off the top just to stay. So the second you stay, you get $5,000. Like, no problem. So, like, could you imagine though the NIL deals that we could have gotten? Like, Think about Tommy Postel's deal, Coach Postel. It would have been for Marlboro Reds or Paul Mall, right? For smoking on the sideline, right?
Extra meal money on the meal card. I would have taken anything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what would your big NIL deal been? Tell me what it would have been.
I don't
You would
know.
have to pay for the hair cutter in Elmont. They would
Yeah,
have to pay for
that and they probably just,
Shout out. What's the place, Vin? What's the place? Shout out.
Brittany and Company, where I get my hair cut now.
Exactly.
My main man Steve, the barber.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, look, it's a brave new world. It was so different when I was in school. If you even were thinking about transferring, you had 5 years to play for, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even included if you got injured, you still only had 5 to play for. And then if you transferred schools, you had to be in that school for a year before you played for that school. In my case, I played 2 years at Hofstra, and then the year I sat out, I wasn't in a school. That the clock was running, so that's 3 years already. So had I gone somewhere else, now I would have had to been in that school for a year, so I couldn't have played that year, and then I would have basically had 1 year left. If it was like it is now, I could have, bounced out of Hofstra at the time and went to any other school, But it's that's what I say. I mean, it's almost like, to me, it's almost like we play basketball on Saturday mornings up at Christopher Morley. You got a different team every year. We choose up teams. It's getting to the point where it's almost looking like these guys are choosing up teams.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking to each other.
Yeah. So we're excited about what's happening in New York with St. John's, with Patino coming in. He's brought all the excitement. He's put together a great team. And the Garden is rocking. They're getting over 19,000 a game at the Garden. It's New York's team, and there's so much excitement. But it was interesting listening to him and, talking about, somebody said to him, "What do you got coming in? You got some good high school kids?" He's like, "High school kids? I'm not even looking at them." He says, "The guys, I got 3 guys that are probably going out. They're men. These guys are like, I need guys who are men already. I can't do it with high school guys unless it's a Cooper Flag or somebody like that, somebody extremely talented. He's going to go for older guys, at least for now. They don't got time to develop a kid."
It's a lot of guys doing that in lacrosse, though, Vin. You got like Rutgers does that too. I mean, I spoke to Brian Brecht 2 years ago about Colin Kelly, who's a kid that was at Canisius. And when Colin hit the portal, I reached out to Brecht for him. I said, "Listen, the kid's 6'5", 215. He's been a leading scorer at Canisius for the first 2 years. He's had 6 goals against Michigan. Like, he's really good."
Yeah.
He said, he said, "Yeah, Rick, that's about the size I want, the age I want." And I said, "Well, hold on a second." Like, it spawned another question. I said, "Coach," he goes, "Honestly, I'd much rather get a grown man versus getting a high school kid, and I can get a grown man and win right away." And that's the way everybody's going now. Look at UNC with the, that was a 5th year, but still, they didn't say, "Oh, I'm not going to take that kid out of the portal," right? The Giancarlo, whatever his last name is.
Yeah, Gian Fracaro. Yeah,
and he's a legitimate game changer for them. I had them as my sleeper of the year.
Yeah,
because they're so talented. Yeah, and it's because, he's got 4 years playing experience. Like, he's not going to go for the number 1 goalie in the country, because when he can get that kid, and then maybe he's already got the number 5 guy who's developing, you get that kid's now a sophomore, then maybe you get another transfer, and these guys are banking on the transfer portal. And do you blame them? I mean, you get a grown man who's played already. A kid that started at Fairfield is going to be probably more effective in your lineup than a kid who's, a 5-star recruit who is coming out of Fairfield High School. You know what I mean? So, like, especially a kid who's 21 years old. He's a big monster. He's already filled his body. He's lifted. He also knows what it takes to be there. Right. So, yeah, the portal is interesting. And I do see, one part of me, Vin, like, I'm old school too, right? And one part of me is like, but then I also look at it like, I can't lie to you, fellas. I was a man child. I'm going to booch myself and say it. Like, I came in and I would have done well no matter what, but I was also bigger and stronger than most guys when I showed up. So but I don't know how many of them are out there now. And that's a different era too, right? I mean, so
I'm laughing because I'm listening closely to you, and I heard you use the word "booch," which Cock defined to us. Cockatera told us he had a kid booch, and it lasted. It seemed to spread through Westchester. That word booch.
do you know he told you the origination of it from one of the Bucellos who he grew up with, right? Like,
Yeah.
why you booching me? And then like you got so many things like booch block, like when you want to. So if I'd say to you, Vin, like, hey Vin, booch block, you're like a 5-time world teamer, like you're legit. So like I'm not booching you because if I just said, yeah, he's a 5-time world teamer, like that's a booch. But when I say booch block, I mean like really, like Vin, I'm throwing you a sick compliment. You know what I
That's
mean?
funny.
But
That's funny.
there's no listen, I have played with the Sombrado brothers many a time. And we were all in our prime when we were doing that. Maybe Vin, you had your prime for like 30 years, but Steven and I had our prime for maybe
Exactly.
5-6 years, right? So I legitimately have played with the Sombrado brothers. And what I was always amazed by the Sombrado brothers, to sidebar this, is, you guys had like, hey, Steven, run play 6. You guys were
Yeah.
running plays like
Yeah.
from your backyard. Like that was hilarious to me, at the same time amazing. But we had some good teams we put together in those tournaments. Those arena
Great
graphics
teams.
teams, they were
Yeah.
great. We had guys like world team
Yeah.
guys like,
Yeah.
and those were hilarious. And then Steven wouldn't get a hotel; he was too cheap, and made us sleep in a car. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We literally got home at 4 a.m. We was no need.
Are you gonna get a hotel for what?
I
Well,
know.
let me do this, Stephen. When we come on, we just like start winging it. We hit the ground running. But I think, Stephen, you got to give him Rick is due. We got to talk about his accolades because Rick is one of the most highly decorated lacrosse players in lacrosse. He's right up there,
There's no
starting
question.
from his high school career at Lakeland and rolling right into that. I know you played on the Empire team, I think 3 times or something, didn't you? And then, playing for the U19 USA team that won a gold medal. And then you roll right into the Qs. So give a little something on. You got his accolades up there, Stephen. You pull his stuff.
There's too many. There's too
Yeah.
many.
There's too many. Yeah, there's too many.
Well, let me ask you this: you were defenseman of the year how many times in
None.
college?
None.
That's shocking. A 4-time All-American who's not defenseman of the year.
Well, I mean, but you got to also look at it in the same way. I mean, let's be honest. How well liked was I?
Well, you were liked by the players. There's no
Yeah, I
doubt.
was liked by the players, but was I
You're an
liked by
enigma.
opposing?
You're an enigma, Rick. You're a self-professed trash talker extreme. So
I
of
do
course, you're
do
going to
that.
get some guys
Yeah,
not too keen on that.
yeah. I mean, so, and it wasn't. Everybody thinks it was like a Syracuse bias why I didn't get that stuff, and I did think my junior and senior year I was the best, the most effective defenseman in the country, right? The one that was. But that's not to take away from the guys I played with either. Like I played with Chad Smith, second team All American, 3-time All American, Hans
Mhm.
Schmidt, another 3-time All American next to me, and I had All American goalies, All American long sticks, and that right there, that also helped, right? Like
Right, of
some days I
course.
didn't have to play a 1, I could play a 2 or a 3 on attack and beat them up,
Right.
and because Hans could handle a matchup and Chad could handle a matchup, and I think everybody always asks me what was the difference between me and them. And I tell them the biggest difference between a first team All American in our day and a second and third is simple. The first team guy does everything the second and third team guys do, meaning shut your guy down, make the right passes, do those good things. But the first team All American throws the behind the backs, scores the goals, does all the little things, gets the ball off the floor when it's not supposed to get off the floor, causes that turnover when, you needed it. And that was, I think, the biggest difference. I just had more flair to my game. And I'll be honest, I don't know where it came from. I think it came from, Vitola giving me a little bit of leash and to do what I needed to do in high school, which is the legendary high school coach. And then Coach Simmons, like we talked about it with Joe Bonacci this morning. If you remember little Joe who played
Mm-hmm.
at Syracuse with the Gates, I was talking to him this morning about work at like 7:30, and he was like, we were really lucky to play for Coach Simmons. I mean, guys, like that guy, I could make 1,000 mistakes and never got pulled. And
Yeah.
and how many guys can do that these days, right? My daughter Angela makes a mistake, she gets yanked, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like how many guys give you that leeway? I think by him doing that, it allowed you to really play with machismo confidence and be gregarious and talk shit and do all the things that you
Yeah.
needed to do to keep your game on that mental edge. Vin, I I am definitely, you guys are much tougher guys than me. I know that because I played with you. But like with a helmet on, you guys all know this. With a helmet on, you think you're the toughest human being on earth, right? Like you're invincible. And that was one thing I got from all the years of coaching. And then, from all the years of the coaching, the other big thing was, I'd be honest with you, you guys could say, I'm going to booch myself, commit what they say, booch aside right now.
Mm-hmm.
I have a massive set of nuts. I didn't care about making mistakes. I didn't think the guy next to me, the guy I guarded was any better than me. Like,
Right.
we're talking Hall of Fame guys that I've beat up in my day. And, I didn't think they were any, like whatever. They were good. I had to play hard, but who are you?
I
Like,
have to say, like the year, what was the year? And we talked about this with Clark a little bit. There was 95 that you won that championship
yeah, we won the one. Yeah, one. Yep, yep,
in 95. It was right.
yep, yep.
Now that year, when Clark talked about the aspect of that being such a team, and it was such a tight locker room, and I get that, and there was a lot of, you had some great players
Of
on there,
course, yeah.
but I
Oh,
will
yeah.
say, my memory of that team, even as much as Casey, is you on the back end. You were a dominating figure, dominating personality and dominating figure on that team. I don't know if that team makes it over the finish line without someone like you. And maybe it's because of the flair. Maybe it's because of Simmons, the way he allowed all of the guys to play and show that. But that was a special team in terms of how they conducted themselves on the field and their expression and artistry of the game, and you were definitely a part of that. That was what puts an eye on that particular team as like, wow, that team's special. Look at that's a fun team to watch. If you're
Yeah.
looking down the program of the weekend roster, you're like, oh, I want to go see them because it is going to be a fun game to watch, and you brought that, whether it was the checks or whether it was how you got the ball up the field and scoring goals, that type of dynamic player. We're seeing it more now in the style of the game, but that wasn't always the style of the game. And you were one
No.
of the guys that really introduced that for sure.
Well, you
You
had
know,
like Pat McCabe, and
the best. He's the best defenseman in Syracuse history.
you had special hands. Your hands. There was guys that defensive guys that made playing with a pole like a toothpick in your hands. But I want to go back and back to your when you started playing and all. What made you end up playing defense or being a pole? Because you did play indoor with us and you had good skills with a short stick. I could see you.
Thanks, Vin.
No, you had very good skills. You were one of the few guys could move the goalie. You threw fakes. You always had great hands, whether it was with a pole or a short stick. What made you gravitate towards, or did the coach just say, Rick, I need you on defense and throw you down there, or what did it?
All right, so he's going to love that I'm saying this. So there's a guy that lives in Rockville Center who texts me from time to time. His name is Dan Reardon, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And Dan Reardon, you guys probably know.
Dan Reardon. Look
Dan
at that.
Reardon. And it's not the Dan Reardon, not Terry's brother,
I know.
but it's Dan Reardon who played at Hobart, then Villanova. It's a John Jay guy. He was my sister's swim coach, him and his sister, in Shrub Oak Swim Club. And my mother made me go swim every morning on a swim team because my sister did. And it was just easy for, taking Rick, shut up, go in the pool, do whatever you're doing. Now, for that, now I'm blessed. I know how to swim, right? I'm a good swimmer, right? But he was the one when my mother was like, all right, he's going to play lacrosse. And she's like, I was bigger than everybody back then. And he's like, He's a defenseman. He's huge. Look at him. So the one thing that my mother did, a woman from New Rochelle, New York, Angela Beardsley, who cut hair, all 5'1", 250 pounds of her, who was a very violent human, by the way, a very violent human, wanted me to be violent, fight like I was her rough and tumble. Like, what did he say? Rick, go over there right now and punch him in the face. And if I didn't go and punch him in the face, I'd get punched in the face. So I get smacked. So, like, my mother wanted that. But the one thing she said was, she walked into Sports Barn, went to buy me my first stick. And that was the only place, right? It was Sports Barn, Olympic Den, and like another place in White Plains, Peck's, which was a hockey store that had lacrosse equipment in our area, right? And from you guys to us. She said, okay, well, Angela, my mother knew the owner. Angela, do you want, we'll get him a stick. She's like, no, get him a long stick. Like, he's going to play defense. Why would you teach him with a short stick? Well, everybody starts with a short stick first. My mother said, no, my son is not. She's like, I don't know what you're going to do, but he's going to be a defenseman. You give him a long stick. I went to a camp the next week, and I was the only young kid with a pole. And that's where it started. Then I saw Billy Pilot at an All-American lacrosse camp back up in Utica, and he did a demo with his goalie stick. And he said that the one thing that sticks out all these years, I'm 51 years old, Billy Pilot, who's still coaching, still has the Billy Pilot goalie school in Florida now. He said, he had a great stick. He was doing crazy stick tricks with his goalie stick. I was like, this freaking guy, holy shit, he looks like, what is going on here? He said, I want to have a better stick than a tackman. Like, that was like, hold on a second. Like, I want to have a better stick than a tackman. So how do I do that? Vin, you're right. Every day I was the guy who picked up sticks. I shot. See, I believe shooting as a long stick is how you get good hands, because the different strength it takes, all the little muscles, all the technique. Guys struggle. They don't find the balance of a pole. Like, I'm strong enough to shoot from the butt end, but like, I tell kids, like, they try to shoot, they can't even get the stick their hands go through before the ball. So they're not using the leverage, the physics. That was my biggest thing. And then I finally said, like, why can't I score behind the back? Why can't I throw the behind the back? Why can't I do that lefty? Why can't I do? And I was lucky, right? I had a tackman in high school that were all Americans. They passed me the ball. But yeah, Vin, I appreciate you saying that, because you used to say that when we would do the one-on-ones at the end of practice. Be like, give Rick a shot. He's got great hands. He shoots well. He fakes moves. I would never forget you saying that, because obviously I'm young. You're a legend. And I'm sitting back like, holy shit, Vinny Sombrato's saying that I got good hands. Like, and hey, give him a shot. Like, yeah. And that was all those years of playing with my long pole in like the gym leagues, and like never saying, I'm not doing the Angela Beardsley method was like, never grab a short stick. You know what I'm saying? Like, so my mother turned out to be a huge influence, but Dan Reardon was the guy who simply said, Mrs. Beardsley, Rick is a defenseman. And then that was it. That's all she wrote. And
that's funny.
Funny how you say that, right? Like, and by the way, if you ask me about, what coffee I had today, I'll give you the origin of coffee, right? I talk forever. So that was a long story to just tell you that Dan Reardon and my mother were the two that were like, no, that's the way it's going to be.
So let me ask you this: in the elevation of your game,
yes,
there were other Lakeland defensemen that were great.
Come on, we know who we're going to talk about.
We know who we're going to talk about. Our friend.
Bro.
A shout out to
listen to this. Watch, ready?
Great
Watch
friend
this.
down in Florida.
Yep, ready? Watch this. I'm gonna go method actor.
I love it.
Vin. Steven. Bro, throwing checks, doing wheelies, bikes, like, rip that guy. Who is that guy? Kiss. Yeah. My guy.
That is so great.
Listen, when we played that year, when we played out in Vail, remember, Steven? I guess we were playing for the Tavern, and you and Kiss were playing on the defense, and you like made a bet who could put it in. Both of you scored, and both of you ripped shots right to the corner. And I said, these guys, they're doing more scoring than the midfielders. It was great.
Let's just say how
What
good
would you
was
say
Kiss?
with Kiss? Do you know what is the deal with the Lakeland guys with all of these checks? Like they were known for these serious checks between Kiss and yourself coming out in such a short period of time. It was like, how did you guys learn all these checks?
All right. So let's just give the story of how Kiss became kind of a mentor to me in ways, right? So Kiss was, and he won't kill me for saying this because I'm his guy and he loves me and I love him and he knows that. But like Kiss, they wouldn't put in like normal high schools. Like Kiss is a really smart guy, but like because he was such like a terror, they would put him in alternative high school. So they put him in BOCES. And lo and behold, who was the permanent sub at BOCES in Yorktown? None other than my mother, the aforementioned Angela Beardsley.
We didn't read today. We got the best lacrosse mind in the game.
Listen to me. Angela Beardsley, the late Angela Beardsley, now that I think about it, is brilliant. So, that nourished Shell High School education, the cosmetology degree, the amount of Kent 3 cigarettes she smoked, so she was a permanent sub. And Steve, and Kiss was in her class. And my mother knew his fan, it's Yorktown, small town. And my mother would go outside and rip butts, like with the kids. They smoke butts. Like she'd tell them to make lacrosse goals for us. So I had 10 lacrosse goals. And like she didn't know what the hell she was doing. It was freaking plumbing. But my dad got her the job. My dad was a politician, got her the job. And, she started to develop a massive love for Kiss. And this is a story I'm going to tell you because those that give Kiss a bad name because of the shit that they've heard or all the things that he's done, you're right. Kiss a mean guy. When he hates you, be somewhere else. But when he loves you, you got to know him that he's got the tender heart and does anything for you.
And they don't know him. That's the thing. They don't really get a chance to really get to know him. That's if most people have something not great to say with Kiss, they really don't know him. That's the
his reputation precedes him, as they say.
It's like me too.
And a lot of times unfairly.
Unfairly, no question.
And Kiss and my mom were like best friends. My mom loved Kiss. So my mom would literally go to my practices in 8th grade and I'd be like, all right, Mom, ready to go? She's like, no, Steven has a game. She called him Steven. Steven has a game. I'm going up to watch Steven play. And of course, I didn't mind because I was lax rat, right? I'm happy to watch Lakeland varsity. I'm part of the program. I'm getting good. Steve's always taking care of me, giving me sticks, throwing me. And Vin, I'll get to the point about the checks. Trust me, it's something. And Steve, I'll tell you, my mother would go to games and literally he would look up in the stands. This is no joke. Like you could ask Kiss. My mother always said one person, she'd go like this. And that meant she wanted one guy knocked out. And Steve became a missile. And if you know anything about Kiss, he's freakishly athletic, freakishly strong. And back then his legs were like this big, like from riding BMX, because he was like number 5 in the world at BMX. And he would go knock out kids. And like my mother would just go like this. And then he would look up and he'd get fired up and then he'd move on. When my mom died, this is what I have to tell you about Steve Kisslinger. When my mom died, he went to the wake. He went to both wakes. And he cried in the corner by himself so much. He loved my mother, and my mother loved him. That's the side that people don't see. A guy who's as tough, rugged as Kiss sat in the corner and cried. And he was and wouldn't let it, no one went near him. He loved my mom so much. And my mom loved Steven, loved him. And so when Kiss, my mom had passed away, Kiss was always around. And Kiss started picking me up and taking me and showing me checks. Yo, let's speak the truth. The shit that we used to dye on sticks, Vin and Steve, I had a stick that was all black and it said first degree rape on it.
God.
Which meant, listen. Back then, you're like, yo, I raped a guy. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to rape him. You can't use that language anymore.
Right.
I had a stick. It said first degree rape. I could tell you when I used it. Empires. I used it in Empires when I was a sophomore. It was black because Petro had the all black stick, right? So Kiss dyed it for me and then put first degree rape on it. Like, that was meant innocently. Here, I'd be canceled nowadays. Then, he had a stick that, like, he would get, like, he would get a different color. I'd use the same thing. And he'd teach me, throw it this way, and I would learn. And then we started playing. I was 15, playing in those big tournaments with, like, Tomcat. I played in those club tournaments, Vin, Croton Point Park, right? With, like, I'd be playing an evening dinner theater in the championship, and I'm guarding the guy from UVA. Like, I guarded one of the Smith brothers. He was like a second team All-American that year. I was 15. I had to get dropped off by dad, and I'm shredding the guy with butt ends. I'm murdering the guy. Like, and I was 15 years old, and that's part of the development. Like Billy Dwan, Billy Ralph, Kiss, all those guys allowed me at 15 years old. They would, like, hey, Mr. Beardsley, because my mom had died. Mr. Beardsley, we need Rick for this event and this tournament. And they started me. It wasn't like I sat the bench. Like, I went out and I was shredding 22, 23-year-old guys in their prime when I was 15, like before I could drive. And, like, so when I got to college, it was so easy. But the checks, Vin, that was all hand-me-down from Kiss, Denny Prue, the late Denny Prue, like, who played at UVA. Those guys, and then, the freedom that Vitola gave us, right? And also, listen, let's talk about Lakeland, right? Lakeland's a little different in Yorktown. I have 6 teammates who are dead, right? Like, nothing, like, I'm not saying anything, like, it was the land of insanity. Like, you could have an all deadbeat team. My high school goalie's in jail. He's a cap.
How far apart is Lakeland and Yorktown?
Same town. I lived closer to Lakeland, to Yorktown High School. I did the Lakeland. It's
like what you would say, Port Washington, Manhasset, like, right?
Same thing. Yep. So yes. So, like, if Vin lived in Plandome, right, and that part of Plandome went to Manhasset, and another part of Plandome went to Port Washington. Yes, that was how it was. It was, dude. It was crazy. So we were rivals, but yet really good friends, and hung out with each other. And it was, those Lakeland Yorktown games, they were as big as any games in America. And, my senior year, there was, the starting lineup, I can give them all in my hands. And if anybody knows anything about lacrosse, a few names. Like, the starting lineup for my high school was Pete Gerace, who went to Delaware as a goalie. Our defense was Ollie Mintz, Army. Mark Reeves, who obviously you guys know Mark, he passed away, right? He was at Chaminade as an assistant. Ohio State at the time. He failed out, but went to Herc and then Adelphi. He was an All-American. Myself. That was our defense, Syracuse. Our midfield, Delaware, Division I soccer. No, Delaware, Penn. That was our first midfield. Then our attack, Christian John's Loyola World Team, U19. Anthony DiMarzo, 4-time All-American, University of Delaware. And Stu Weitzman, Dr. Stu, is a chiropractor in Bedford, went to Geneseo and was like one of Geneseo's all-time leading scorers. That was our lineup. Yorktown's was Henry Wheatate, Georgetown, Foley, Loyola, Kuzma, Hopkins, Rocco DeAndre in goal, Carolina. Midfield, Roy Colsey, Syracuse, Hall of Fame, Usman Green, Carolina, Chris Grandy, UMass. The long stick was Costello, who obviously Costi had his issues, but he was still one of the greatest. Could have been one of the greatest. And then the attack was Dave Marr, Hopkins, Cavo, late great Cavo, Syracuse, and the third guy, Paulie Smith, won a national championship at Salisbury. Like, that was the starters, like, in that game. That team's pretty good. That game's pretty good.
Very
you
good.
know, like, and.
But let me ask you, Rick. So you have this history. You got, you got these two towns near each other, and you got a lot of guys being placed in D1 and being effective in D1. And what made you? When was your mind made up for Syracuse? Did you have that as a goal as a younger guy, a sophomore, or when did you say, I think Cuse is the spot for me?
Well, Coach Vitola walked up to my dad and said, "Listen, Fred, you don't need to save for college for him anymore." When I was a freshman, so my father stopped saving money for my college. So somebody saw something in me. When it was really Syracuse was with Jim Egan, right? So Jim, obviously Eags was our guy. He's a Lakeland guy. 2-time or 3-time national champ there, 2-time I think, or 3-time. I think it's 3-time at Syracuse. And it was just in my head. That's where you're going to play. That's where you're going to play. And I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. Like, you had Pat. I mean, I emulated my style after Pat McCabe, Dave Petramala, and Steve Kisslinger. That's the three. Those guys were
pretty good three to emulate after. I can tell you that. You're not going to get much better than that.
No, and like Pat was when you he would toe drag, picking up off the ball like that was Pat. Petro was the big over the head, big hat, and Kiss was all the razzle and dazzle and behind the backs. So 3 really good guys that I watched as much as I could have. And the big thing, this generation doesn't do a great job like we do, fellas. Like, so you could take this podcast and you're talking to guys who are the history of the game, right? Vin, you, me, Petro, Paul Kark, Smalley with his, defensive prowess at Nassau, right? Like, I heard this. This is what I heard about Smalley. Toughest guy ever. Toughest guy ever, I heard.
You heard it from him.
I heard it from him. But no, and I appreciate the shout out he gave me, and I miss that he's not here. But that was like, the kids these days don't even know when they send recruiting emails. They'll send an email to Duke, "Dear Coach Stevenson." Meanwhile, they're trying to send it to Coach Danowski because his email's under someone who's a Stevenson. Like, right. At least that's what it shows. So he writes Coach Stevenson. Another kid I saw, like, you've got to learn the history of the game. You can't, expect to be successful at anything and not know a lot about it. Like, I'm in sales, right? I sell to lacrosse programs. I follow as many lacrosse programs on social media as I can, not because I'm older, but because I always want to be in the know, be in the cutting edge of things, right? And these kids don't really understand, the history. So I went to a Syracuse practice. I'll give you a quick story. I went to a Syracuse practice in the fall. Gary, I didn't go because Gary told me to. I just wanted to stop to watch the team. He made me talk to. So I introduced myself to a kid. He'll remain nameless. Dad went to Yorktown. He's a freshman there. He shook my hand. He had no idea who I was. Now I'm going to tell you straight up, when a 4-time All-American showed up at our practices, we knew who he was.
Yeah.
We knew everything about him. And by the way, that's with the availability of less information.
Exactly.
Back then, like Vin, I put money on it. You get it a lot because people don't realize when they see you, like, the guy's been on 5 world teams. They're like, what? I've said that, Vin, just so you know.
Well, 4, only 4.
But if you count LA, it's 5.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if you count LA.
But here's what I'm going to say. Vin, do you know that even at Hofstra, when remember I ran into you guys and watching games, I show up randomly at shit because that's me doing clinics all over. Like, guys, like, who's that? I'm like, you don't know who that is? Like, you're a lacrosse guy. Like, how do you not know who those guys are? And for me, I try to know who everybody is, and because it's important, the history of the game, and I'm listen. This is no slight, Vin. You're going to take it as Rick said, me not being in the Hall of Fame for me is it bothers me every day because I know I was as good as anybody, but it's because I also know the history of the game. I've done a lot for the game, but my thing is I know the history. I know who, when I call up, Brian Farrell, right? I think, what's the dad's name? Is it Brian, right?
I think the dad, Mike Farrell.
Mike Farrell. When I call Mike Farrell and I see all of a sudden at Maryland United Girls Lacrosse, it's Mike Farrell, University of Maryland. I'm like, I know who that kid is. I know who his son is too. I know that he's a Hall of Famer from the 80s. And I'm like, boom. I understand who he is, right? And I immediately give that shout out right there. Hey, just letting you know, I know who I'm talking to right now. And, that's my biggest thing I do well. Like I was talking with Joe today, I'm like, I'm the one Syracuse alumnus who graduated in 95, but knows the kids to 2023 and knows the guys to the 70s. I am like that guy. Like I know the guys because I took so much pride in something I love. And I think the only way that I got good at this game was throwing your heart into it and loving it. And I did. Like, I love it. Trust me. If you don't think I have memories about literally sleeping in Stevens' green Grand Cherokee, which, by the way, was a sick car back then. That was the sickest model. I was dope. And then going out on a field and then playing with Gags and you guys and like the Irvade, like it was awesome. Like I understand the history of the game more than, and I might be one of those Westchester guys who knows a lot about Long Island because of playing with so many Long Island guys, you know. And Long Island lacrosse is unto itself.
You love to play, you know, and I think the other thing, just to talk on the fact of why it's important to know the history, is you can learn. You can learn from the young guys. You can learn from the old idea is to learn and learn things to get better. And it's okay to copy off of somebody. If I see somebody doing something new, even now, if I see somebody, I'm like, wow, that was pretty good. How did he do that? I'm going to try to do that. And that's how you should be. You know, that's the artistry of the game. You know, some guys have the creativity that they are the ones inventing it. And everybody else is just copying. Like, for example, who ever thought to shoot a backhand coming around the right side until Lyle Thompson did it in that playoff game? And now everybody's shooting backhands, you know? So somebody is creative and makes that artistry, and then everybody else says, you know what, that might be pretty good. And that's okay. It's okay to copy the person. Make yourself better. Understand that there were a lot of guys, you know, yes, the game was different. There were checkers because the ball did come out of the stick. And there were very good checkers that people were terrified of, that they didn't want any part of, that they didn't want to go near. And, you know, that is different today just because the evolution and the technology of the sticks. I don't really feel that there's any defenseman today that you would say to any attackman like they're actually fearing the guy.
Yeah.
Like they feel like maybe they'll get stopped, maybe they'll get shut down, maybe they won't have a lot of points. But there was a time when
you could get embarrassed.
You could get humiliated.
Oh, yeah.
You would be humiliated.
Yeah,
you know?
and you could go vice versa too.
You're not really seeing that. You know, you don't really see that.
I think the technology with the sticks and all makes it. You know, we were playing in a game. Pat came and played with us. You know, where you know, Steven and Pat are like 10 years younger than me, but we're playing with these young guys. And, you know, Pat gives the old butt digger. I mean, that was his thing, you know. And, you know, this kid's running behind the goal and Pat gets it in deep. I mean, the guy's stick is upside down, you know. And Pat's like looking for the ball. And the kid, you know, adjusts his stick and he's still running. And he's like, he goes, I can't do this anymore. You know, it's like the ball doesn't come out.
You know, another thing is like I talked to Ron Caputo from Duke a couple of weeks ago. And he said the other thing, you know, these kids are like all like nice. Like they none of us, like when we got to a field, like we were ready to punch each other in the face. We didn't care. Like you were starting stuff, you were violent, you were trying to, like you said, you're trying to embarrass someone. That was what I guess drove some of us, right? Probably drove most people to like the fear of failure, obviously, but like that is something that, like he mentioned, you know what he said? I want to recruit the kid everybody hates. Like, we don't like him. Yeah, good. That means I want him. Yeah. Like the guy that, and there's not many kids like that anymore. Think about it. There's not guys that go out and go, God, I don't like him. I don't really like that guy. Like I could tell you, when you don't know me, my reputation is you don't like me. Guaranteed. Right. I mean, you can't let me knock you down and choke you out in a men's league game, Vin. You can't do that. You know what I mean? But like, you know, that's the game has definitely been different and it's changed for great ways. Let's speak the truth between us. I love lacrosse. I love the girls' game, having two daughters, right? The things they can do with the stick technology now and the sticks and how strong they are. And the training, you know, that's another thing, Vin, the training. and Steven, the training is so different.
Yeah.
Oh, you trained. I took you to the Hamptons to train.
Yes, you did. You trained me well. We were really good at the bottle service. It was incredible. Bottle service was amazing. And I trained this hand, and then I would put it out this
Is right.
hand.
It helped
Then
with
I'd
the
do this
ding
one.
dong.
It helped with the ding dong. And then sometimes when I needed to go throw a rap check, I'd be like, and then get my drink quick in case, when you're tipping, you get to it fast. It was fun though, and lacrosse is still fun. And like you guys, I watch game after game. Like I check Inside Lacrosse every day to see who's playing, and whether it's a women's game or a men's game.
Vin, would you agree with this? What Rick was saying. To me, it brings up a point of maybe back in the day a little bit, especially the pro leagues. Let's face it, the pro leagues really started in the mid '80s with indoor, really,
Yep.
and then really indoor.
That was when I was Bayridge. I was Bayridge Beardsley.
Bayridge Beardsley came in,
and then you get into MLL, but you got club in there, so you got all of that. All I'm saying about today's guys, and Smalley talks about this a lot too. It's different, and it goes to what you're saying. Like everybody's so nice, and I appreciate that. There's just a lot of nice kids, but there really is no edge, because when you went back in those '80s and different guys, there was edge there. So there were guys that were not liked, and there was rivalries that there were in the games. You could feel the tension of the guys not liking, whether they didn't like each other. You could feel it, and that was the personality of the league. That's why it seems just too vanilla. What do you think about that, Vin?
Yeah, I mean, look, these kids are when we got out of high school and you were playing at that next level, you didn't know other guys other than that were on your team because there was no travel ball. Now these kids are on these travel teams. They've maybe been playing against these guys and with guys from other states and everything since they're very young. So they do become friends, which is not a bad thing. But what I'm saying is, does it take an edge off them? Can they compete at the highest level against, guys that they're too familiar with maybe, Do you give it your all, or do you, or do you lay back a little bit? But, I always like playing against guys I didn't know, to be honest with you, because I know when I knew guys, I'm not talking about games that really mattered. I'm talking about summer leagues and things like that. If I knew a guy and I was playing against him, I wouldn't, I wouldn't go crazy on a guy because it was like we were probably winning anyway. But I knew a guy and he was my friend. So I used to say, I much rather have guys I don't know and I just can play as hard as I want to play. And for these kids, like I said, not that they're not always playing hard. I think they do. But I think
they play definitely harder than we do. They play faster in practice, without a doubt.
Yeah, no, they listen. It's ultra competitive. The great athletes from our time could play in any era, that's for sure. But when you go from 1 to 40 on a roster, these kids, they're definitely from 20 to 40 is a lot better than what we had at 20 to 40. Because any one of these kids looks I used to laugh, when I was playing at Hofstra, when I would go to a game in Hofstra, when teams warmed up and they had jackets on or whatever they had, you didn't even see their numbers. You could watch back then, I'm talking about late 70s, early 80s, and you could definitely pick out the 5 best guys on each team just by how they were warming up, right? And you'd say, oh, that guy, that must be one of the best guys. That's got to be that guy because look how he's moving or how he's shooting it. Now I go to these college games. They've got their sweats on, whatever. I'm like, who's who? I'm like, look at that guy shooting. And a guy will say to me, oh, that kid don't even play. I'm like, really? I'm like, that kid looks friggin' good to me. But that's what it is. It's like, that's how competitive it is. So like what you do in terms of your coaching and what Stephen and I do, we fooled around and coached. And, I used to have these workouts at Alley Pond Park with some older guys, is just try to give them a little bit of an edge because to me, the skill levels are incredible. It's desire. It's the mental part. You're right. It's the mental part of
the game. It's all
mental,
man.
It's all IQ. And you can see some kids who have success, you have to, one thing's for sure. We've talked about you having great hands and different guys who have great hands. When you're not confident, everybody's hands tighten up. All of a sudden, you're not catching easy passes.
Mm-hmm.
Guys start to go down in the tank. And I tell kids, look, you got to be able, and that's what I love about always hearing about Simmons and a few other, Division I coaches, that
Mm-hmm.
especially Simmons, because I know so many Syracuse guys that went through the program, and I ask them
Mm-hmm.
all the time that he gave you that freedom. You didn't have to feel like if you dropped the ball, that was it. You were done with him.
Mm-hmm.
Was that, he probably was pat you on the head and say, you get the next one. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
I know what you're capable of. And that's different coaches. Some coaches are hard asses and
Mm-hmm.
some coaches. But for you, knowing your personality like I do, you couldn't have had a better coach for you playing up at Syracuse.
No, I was in the right spot, right? In the
Yeah.
right spot, Vin. Totally in the
Yeah.
right spot. I mean, I had freedom.
Yeah.
And
It was
there's
a
a
good
story that's
marriage.
very, very true. There's a story where I left school like 4 weeks in and started driving home because I just was like, this place sucks. Like, what the hell is there here? I'm going to go to Hofstra. I'll just transfer to Hofstra. I just started driving south. I didn't even call my father. I was just going to end up on my sister's couch, and my dad was in Florida. So it was like, no, my dad was in Yorktown at the time, and I was like, I'm just going to show up, deal with my dad, F it, like whatever. This place blows. And I got to Cortland, and like just before I got to Cortland, I started thinking like, yeah, who else is going to put up with me? Like, who's going to put up with the shit that I'm going to try and do here? And there was no one. I just hit a U-turn off the exit, back on the exit. Drove back into the office, looked at Coach Simmons and said, Coach, I'm sorry that I left. Uh, I apologize. And, you're probably the only one who's going to put up with me. And he went, all right, Rick, I'll see you tomorrow practice. He didn't get after me, didn't say anything. I'll see you
Yeah.
tomorrow practice. So I'm glad to have you. See you tomorrow practice. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, who'd have done that, right? Like, I would have had this day and age. I would have had to claim, oh, I'm mentally weak. I got issues, and coach, you got to get me therapy. And then what would have happened is coach got to go tell 5 other people, and then next thing you know. Now, I'm not saying that's bad, by the way. We all know that, right? Everybody's different. The generation is more driven from information and seeing all these highlights that no one ever makes mistakes. But yeah, that's a very true story. And you're right. I wouldn't have been able to. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I got pretty banged up on a Friday afternoon practice. I went out and then went out right from practice in my jock, my jersey, and I got after it. Okay. And unbeknownst to me, my friends were pouring 151 in my Coors Lights. So by 8 o'clock, to say that I was a train wreck would be very different, right? Like I was an absolute puddle. And Freddie and Maya took me back to my apartment, and they have a picture of me in my tighty whities, and I was punching the walls, and my hands were all bloody. I was so drunk. So why am I telling you this? The next day, I went to practice at 8 a.m. Still bombed. Okay. Coach Desco told us we'd go over and we're doing like skeleton offense or something. He's like, all right, defense, go over there and do a poke check drill. I looked right at him. I was like, I'm way too good to do a poke check drill. And he snapped. I ran the Carrier Dome steps for the rest of the practice. And of course I was dying, but anytime I got, and he could see me, I was hooting and hollering, I'm going to be in better shape than everybody else. Woo! But my point is I'd have been tossed off a team back then.
Yeah.
But that is what Edge is, I think, in a lot of ways. And,
Well,
for me, it was different. And my mouth did a lot of the mental creating, right? Like it really went after people. I went after moms, girlfriends. I mean, you name it, I brought it up. Like if a guy waved to his girlfriend, forget it. It was over. I had ammo to say, I would say things that were so below the belt that I
you
don't.
used to like to get in people's heads. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
And
because that was the only
look,
way.
as it was, they knew if you were covering them, they were going to have a tough day already.
Yeah,
Then when you started doing the mental anguish on them, some guys might have played harder and said, I'm going to
Rick
make this
probably
guy
he
understand.
doesn't know this, but he actually taught me a lifelong lesson in lacrosse. You probably you're not even aware of this story.
What? Put your seat back when you're going to sleep in the car all the
Well,
way and do this?
this is true, and this is
Okay.
actually a true story. And I
Okay.
learned some, and actually, you could point to the series that the PLL just had indoor, and a similar scenario happened. Similar because it's not exactly the same situation, but we were you were playing for an opposite team, and we were playing for a team in the Hamptons. It was in one of those Suffolk tournaments, and we were winning. We were winning by a goal, and it was one of these you have to keep it in the box, very very late. And I have the ball, and oh boy, here comes Rick. Here comes Rick. Rick's. Everybody shut off, and Rick's gonna have to take it from me. I got nobody to pass it to, but I'm gonna try to run for my life, but I can't go out of the box. So I run, and I say, my best chance is I'm going right at him. And I go right at him, and you go to take the ball away on the check, and I evade you. And now it's like the greatest thing. I finally have beaten Ric Beardsley. He didn't take it away from me. But I'm going right at the goal. So what else am I going to do? I'm going to score. Billy Day's in the goal. I shoot one where it looks pretty open. And he basically waffles it somehow. He basically gets his bottom hand. It's off his glove. They get it. They throw it up the field. It ends up in Mark Millen's stick. He shoots and scores and ties the game. And I say, why the hell did I shoot that?
We lost in overtime.
And we lost in overtime. So it taught me a lifelong lesson at the end of games to say how much more valuable the possession is than even scoring the goal. Maybe they would have got the face off and scored 2 goals and tied the game.
Well, I'm glad Billy Day bailed me out, first of all, okay? Because I don't consider getting beat unless you score, because that's
Right.
just me.
That's
true.
true.
But BD bailed me out. And, that's pretty funny you even say stuff like that, because as D guys, like Vin, remember when you guys came up and played in 94 up in Yorktown and your goalies they're battling? It was Schmoller, Quinn, and Sal. Those were your 3 goalies. And they
In
were
that exhibition game, you mean, when we
yeah,
played
so
you
they
there?
would
Yeah.
so they would play. So we had Sal the first quarter, the Yorktown All Stars, and like I remember going over the head. I think it was on Mark Millen and missed, and like Sal, boom, big save, and I was like, "Whoa, hold on a second. It's not automatic when a dude beats me." So
Yeah.
you just all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I can be risky, like really risky," and how it like that right there made you be better because it was not an automatic. Like in high school, you got beat, it's probably an automatic a lot, right? Because I didn't have, listen, Gerace was a great goalie. Andy Hickey, who's in jail, was a great goalie. Rob D was a fine goalie. But like Saran, like at Syracuse, that was great. He was great one on one. But like, it's funny you say that. Like, you forget how good goalies were back then because guys were good shooters. They were really smart shooters. Here, guys like just rip to a spot, right? They catch and rip to a spot. You guys were really strategic where you placed it, and those goalies were, with big, huge, heavy sticks, not the training that they would normally get, and like that these guys get, and they were so sick. I mean, I look at our goalies and I was like, in that era, think about Carolina. How many saves Billy Day made that were on the doorsteps with his defense? Alex Martin, Greg Paradine, and Chuck Bresci. Like 2 guys that threw gazillions of checks, didn't care about getting beat. I mean, I know that like most Syracuse goalies, they never say are very good, but guess what? They were really good. They made millions of stops from 10 yards in because we wouldn't slide and we'd go over the head. And
Right.
like, that's like, to me, that's amazing. You're right. So you learn that lesson because the possession is that the goalies are that good, right? Like, run it out.
The game would have been over if I didn't find an escape hatch where
Yeah.
I could have ran to the corner or something behind the goal, pass up a shot in front of the goal, but that would have actually been the smartest play. So I say and I wasn't young
Shoot
at
it.
the time either.
I'll give you the actual play. Shoot it over the goal.
Shoot it over the goal if you get a backup, So
You had it back.
there's a lot of these are the things that, listen, I give credit to Vinny because I always say, like I tell my kids, they follow Kung Fu Panda. I say I know a lot about lacrosse. I tell them, I say I'm like the little mouse in Kung Fu Panda. I know a lot. The master. I said Vinny's like the old turtle, Uguay. He's the ultimate. He's the ultimate one. But those are the little things that Vinny, and Postels.
Yeah, like I didn't even think about that just now, Vin, like shoot it over the goal. Like that didn't even go through my mind.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it all has to do with, just being out there so many more times, because you end up, and usually you learn it because you got burned by it before.
Why I learned it. And that's why I learned it.
Then you say,
sometimes you hope that it doesn't cost you the game and you can still learn it. But
I mean, listen, I was lucky to play with some of the not only the best players, but they were the smartest players. You talk about, the Engelke brothers and, guys like that, Popo, and, we had so many.
Who's the Engelke, Vin, who runs True Blue? Played at UVA? Was it Hopkins or UVA?
Thomas. Yeah. I didn't play as much with Thomas. I
heard he was legit.
He was a great player, Thomas. But he had two older brothers that were great. That helps, of course. But all three of them were like very, very high IQ players.
Well, here's a great thing about Thomas Engelke. So he goes to Hopkins, right? He's one of these, the legit high school player that ends up at Hopkins, right? But he's not real, they're loaded teams, and they have all these different guys, and he's not in the main core of guys, but yet he's on the extra man somehow,
Yeah.
just because of high level IQ passer.
Yep. That's like my oldest daughter, Angela, is, she was playing a ton as a freshman in the fall. Girls came back. She didn't have a great beginning of the spring, but she's on man up because she's a lefty that can shoot, pass, and can do those things well. So she's just on man up right now, which is totally fine. But like,
you gotta be lucky. You gotta be lucky to have coaches that
recognize that. Yes.
And they can use you in the right way. Because a lot of, I've had coaches where, sometimes, they try to put, think that they're going to make the kid be something he's not, like somehow I'm going to put this, round peg in a square, and it just doesn't work. Like I was always a firm believer, learning it, playing under the tutelage and him telling me so many things about how to play the game right, like a Postel. He had such a great feel for the game. He knew the technical parts of the game, but he also had, from a sideline standpoint, like it didn't matter not that we had anybody that was weak on our team, but it was like whoever had the hot hand that day, they were getting the ball. He didn't care. This guy was our high scorer. Today, you got a bad matchup. We're going here. We're going there. He could adjust on the fly immediately, which is, he was able to identify. That's few guys can do that. There's some coaches are tremendous during the week, game plan wise and all, but then when it starts getting rough during a game, they might freeze up a little. They don't know how to adjust or change a midfield or somehow change a matchup or, I watch games today and because the defensemen are definitely, there's so many good. These guys are really good.
Oh God, their feet are ridiculous. They're long. They stay on your hands. They get sticky on you when their sticks on you, and all of a sudden you bounce off. They stay sticky with you. It's unbelievable.
So I see the way the game. When I was playing in college, which is a long time ago, there was very rarely guys who picked on ball. You didn't pick on ball because you thought that was like an automatic double team. You know what I mean? But today, the only way a lot of these attackmen have an ability to get free is because they use the pick.
Yep, they use a scrape or a pick.
Use it or don't use it, and I see. Now, if you got a kid on attack that can beat a pole without a pick, now you got something. Right. And you got something with a kid. It's taken better. You're elite if you can do that, and there are some guys that can do that.
Minikis is about the one kid that comes to mind, the kid from Colgate.
Yeah, well, that kid had that explosive speed, but
lightning steps, him and his brother.
I watch Kirst, the kid on
Yep,
Cornell.
he's explosive and he's big.
And if you don't come with a double on that kid, I don't know that one guy could ever hold that kid. And then of course you got Joey Spallina, who's a very high IQ player. He did win a couple one-on-one battles this year, but Joey's as good as it gets coming off a pick. He knows how to use picks. He runs full speed. He knows how to get through it. And that's why, so I look at the opposite of that. I see what the offense is trying to do, but I'm like a more defensive-minded person anyway. And I'm like, okay, I watched this guy have success doing this 1, 2, 3, 4 games. I'm going into a game against him. I'm playing against him. I'm gearing my defense that if there's a pick on him, let's double him hard.
Jump it.
Immediately.
Jump it right away.
Let somebody else try to make a play. Yep. Let's see if somebody else can. I'm not going to let him get his hand or run to that back point and get the guy hung where he's standing there and just being able to feed. You're going to get killed with that. But yet I see teams, and I got to think these coaches, are watching video and scouting and doing the whole thing.
I would think so.
And I say, well, I don't see an adjustment. And, I said this on the last when Petro was on with us, and I said, I see, you talk about there's the elite teams, almost the same kind of teams that are up there every year, and then they bounce up and down from 5 to 10 maybe. But if you're a team that's like perennially a 15 or an 18, as a coach, what can you do to break the mold? To make them play a different style, because you're going to play their style and just lose again. You might get closer. You might, we only lost by 2. Next year we'll get them, but the next year you lose again by 2. The next year you lose again by 5. The next year, do something out of the box. What's the difference? You're losing anyway, So I'm a big believer in trying to, fit with what I have on my team and take what I have from my team and make the other team have to play my style, whatever it may be.
Have you seen Colgate play? They junk it up better than anybody. They don't play the ball behind. They're causing fits, and now look at them. They're like 17th or 18th. They're causing straight fits for people because they don't care. Crazy. And that's the difference. Think about it. Our generation, if you junked it up, you got punished.
Yeah.
In their generation, this generation, you junk it up, it kind of works.
Yeah.
We knew on a face guard or a shutoff, we knew how to get open. These guys sometimes they don't even move. They don't use it. They don't know how to use it as a double pick. They don't understand
exactly, and that's what Vinny's exactly talking about. Try these different things. Be a little.
I agree
with what you do. What do you make? Let's talk a little bit about Syracuse now. I mean, obviously, there's now been a resurgence to where. I think anybody who's watching could realize that Syracuse is back. They're back. It's just, are they going to make that next step? Are they going to, after being in however many, that record of Final Fours in a row, they haven't been in a Final Four in a while. And it's, the last couple games, they've lost these 2 games in a row, but I see a lot of promise with that team. I got to watch them at Maryland, and
you were there at the game I saw.
And that game could have gone either way. That was a battle, and the Harvard game, I think, might have got away from them because they had such a good start. They got jump started and it sort of went awry for them. And Harvard is clearly, an up and coming team. They're going to make a little noise in the Ivy this year as well. I don't think losing 2 games, I think Syracuse is positioned to do pretty well. What do you think?
I mean, I agree in so many ways. People, I was on radio. I'm on radio weekly here in Syracuse to talk about Syracuse lacrosse. And especially when they lose, people love to hear what I have to say because I used to be very, very I would be we're just not good. That kid's not good. That coach did a terrible job of adjusting. The biggest thing that I saw is Harvard number 1 is good. Harvard number 2 stuck to their game plan. Harvard number 3 made adjustments after it was 5-0. But they seemed, which is very, you guys know this, let's be honest, the stereotypical Ivy League kid, you think they're going to fold, right? They just never they never quit. They just kept going. And towards the end of the game, when you gave them life and confidence, they did what, guys? They jumped. They were jumping in front of shots. That right there, they were airing out on ground balls. They were playing more aggressive. They got fouls, so what? But they packed it in, tried to make Syracuse beat them, without sliding, and beat them from the outside. And their goalie's the freshman. He's excellent.
That kid's good.
And he cleared himself up after those first 5 goals. But what I saw was a team that just wanted it more. Like, to me, Syracuse has leaders. Like Joey Spallina, guys, I eat dinner with Joey all the time, and I go out with Billy Dwan. I go out with his brothers. Joey is a consummate leader. Like, I know the things that he does that no one sees. Like, I know that he meets with the coaches an hour before practice to talk about, what were the goals of practice, so he can help push those goals. Like, he does do those types of things. He's the first person to watch film. He's the first person to get a scouting report. Like, same thing with Billy Dwan. He's right in during his office. Like, that's how it works. They do so much, but like, it just seemed like the other kids just didn't want to lead as much. Does that make sense? Or didn't want it as much. It was like they kept looking around like, how are they in this game? You know what I mean? Like, that's the feel I got. And I was sitting in a box with Jamie Archer, who's a former All-American attackman, and obviously the Charlie the Laser Lockwood, our old Saints teammate. So it's us three who played together. Jamie's a Hall of Fame high school coach up here. He's won gazillions of national championships. Charlie's obviously a Hall of Fame lacrosse player. And then there's me, right? Sitting there watching this game. And, none of our stuff that we're saying is negative. It was never negative. It was just, wow, we keep winning face-offs. We just can't bury them. We just can't kill them. We can't take the dagger and twist it. And one was, like, the biggest thing was, wow, Harvard just won't go away. They're like that gnat you keep swatting, and they just kept coming. And then sooner or later, that gnat gets in your ear, and then that's it, right? You're digging it out, and then it's in there, and you're like you try to get it out, and like, that's what they were. But everybody
Harvard had these guys. Like, to me, Harvard, like, they I don't know that I would say strong athletes, and they might very well be strong.
They were
athletes,
big and strong,
they
absolutely.
Like these thick bodies, like you couldn't even move them around. They could move up checks and not really get knocked off balance and still have poise. No, that's what they looked like to me.
They look very athletic to me. I thought they out physical. Somebody asked me, if I had any criticism of Cuse in terms of
they're not big physically,
right? On the offensive side,
yes, they're not big physically.
They got some guys on D, but they got they're not big. I mean, listen, Hiltz is as skilled as they come.
Oh my God, when he gets his hands free, forget it.
Joey's as skilled as they come. Yep. The other kid had a great game. The other guy, what do you have? 5-6 goals. It was a career day for him to win. Yep. It was very good. Who's scoring all the goals? Finn Thompson, I think.
Finn Thompson, he had like 4 or 5 goals. Yep.
Light too.
I think my opinion is they're a little light at the midfield. I don't think they're getting enough out of the middies. A scary sign if you're trying to look, if you're a real Cuse fan and you're looking inside that game, is to win that many faceoffs and still lose the game. That's a little scary. It tells you, the defense didn't really hold up.
I think the defense slid fast, by the way, Vin. They slid to matchups. They slid to matchups they didn't need to quickly. Yeah. And as you know, obviously sliding in someone's face creates, if the kid's smart enough to move the ball, creates offense, right? And
yeah.
And they were trying to blame it on like the goalie McCool. I don't think McCool was bad at all. I think he made saves that he was supposed to make. Yeah, he could have made a few more, but so could have everybody, right? That Harvard goalie was legit, everybody said, but he could have made one of the first 5 shots, right? He could have saved those, but I think they created offense by sliding. I think the one thing Harvard did real well is they didn't create offense from sliding at all. I mean, if you think about it, I couldn't believe I had an angle. I was like right at the top of the box from where this box was I was sitting in. So I could see, like I was like 10-yard line to like 20. That's a lot of green space. And when you dodge from the wing, you get over that top into that spot. You usually should be able to pepper that goalie. But for some reason, Syracuse didn't take advantage of that. But that was welcomed. And then you know the deal. They talk about Syracuse. Oh, they're excellent at moving the ball. They're excellent at moving the ball. Like, okay. They're excellent at moving the ball. You can pass the ball around the perimeter. If no one slides to you or no one comes out and approaches you for you to break them down, they're still sloughed in. The ball movement doesn't do much unless you draw and dump. And they weren't.
What did Tommy Round say, Vin?
What did he say?
You got to get a guy that can get inside the defense.
You got to get a guy who can get inside.
Passing it around, you need somebody to get inside the defense.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, in this day and age, you have to have guys who can break a guy down, and it could be a dummy dodge. Like I don't
think that kid, the one kid Ochoa didn't play, right? And I think he's pretty good.
Yeah. He wasn't playing. What's his name there? Yeah, he wasn't. Roa, but that's okay. Roa, he wasn't playing, but like they didn't come out of the box.
It looks like they lost Burt Whistle, right? He looked like he got hurt.
Yes, he got hurt. So but I think I think you need to make some adjustments, obviously in game. I think John Tillman did a great job of doing that at Maryland. We all know what a coach Tillman is. I'm not taking anything against Gary or his staff. They just made different adjustments, right? And
but I think even in that Maryland game, Rick, to be honest, like it may go to like you're saying about the hustle. Obviously Syracuse has a tremendous face-off guy.
Absolutely, yes.
And Maryland was able to neutralize him to the extent that even once he was winning, Maryland's wings was coming up with the ball. They were fighting.
Well, first of all, I mean, 51. Like, here's the only adjustment I made. So, Vin, this is like you talk about shooting over the goal, like as a backup, like a possession shot. Like, I see certain things quickly being a D guy, and I'm like, I would first thing I said, sitting with a buddy, was like, okay, 51's killing us on the wings. Put a pole next to him. Let him battle against a pole instead of a shorty. It's a different battle picking up a ball pole to pole. Very different. Let Roa on the other side or English battle that shorty. I'll take my money on those guys because they're so fast off the ground.
Yeah.
That little adjustment, I think, was one that was missed. And I don't, that again, like I've coached, at a high level, I've coached at a high school level, and we talk about developing players. I sometimes think that high school coaches see that stuff more because you have a lot less talent, right? You're more likely to go against your game plan when it's not working or make adjustments when you're in high school because you're like, wow, that's a blatant mismatch. I got to adjust. Or you come up with a game plan, like you said, Vin, that's out of the ordinary. I mean, I can tell you some of my game plans at CBA were simple. It was, all right, we're not sliding to this kid the entire day because if we slide, it creates. You're on your own, dude. If he scores, he scores four goals a game. All I need you to do is hold him to 2. That's all.
Right.
I don't care how you do it. You can shut him off if you want one away. Like, just limit the possessions, limit the things he does. And I think that's why Vin, I think defensemen have real good mindsets on game planning because it's always looked at from a how to not create, let shit happen to you. And defense is easy to adjust with, right? Offense, you can shoot this way, shoot that way, shoot this way. Defense, you still have to approach a certain way. You still got to push a guy a certain way. Still got to slide a certain way. But offense, you could be like, I can go between the legs from 10 yards out. I can do, I come off a pick. I can repick. Like, you have to have all the rules. So I think the discipline on defense is something that got away from them in that game. Not in the Maryland game, but in the Harvard game. And then, I talked about it this week. Utah, obviously, is dangerous. That's a long flight. That's a different atmosphere, right? Like, I don't know how it affects kids. Like, I know it probably wouldn't affect me. Like, I don't know. I didn't think about that stuff. But it'll be thought of because that's the way the game is thought of now. And then you got Colgate, who junks it up. Like, can Colgate pick them? Can they pick Colgate apart? And then you have Hopkins, right? So it goes Utah, Hopkins, right? You're going bang, bang. Like, you got to get yourself straight.
I don't think it's a time. That's why I brought it up. I
don't think it's a time to panic at all.
Just to do the panic button. I think that Syracuse is a very, very good team.
But another thing I got to say, Stephen, another thing that we did in our era, we played big games right off the bat. Like, sometimes people saying like there's all like, you're easing in. I think you play tough ones right off the bat. Then you throttle yourself down, right?
Yeah,
that's what I think. But
it seems like Maryland. I mean, I look at Maryland's schedule. I'm like, where is his kind of easy game. He doesn't even look like he has an easy game. You
Yeah,
know,
I agree.
he goes
I
through a
agree.
gauntlet, but when I say I don't think Syracuse should panic, other teams out there that should start panicking, is Virginia on the cusp of maybe like a 500 season?
I mean, yeah, let's talk about that one. Have you ever seen a team not? Have you ever seen a Virginia team with that much talent or that many recruits on paper score 5 goals against Ohio State, who just lost the week before? Didn't just lose, got slaughtered. Like, you know, I, I don't know. Is that a case of there's too many alpha males and not enough betas? Because you do have to have a great mix to be successful at that level. But the one thing that is great for Virginia here, Steve, is that their schedule is so tough that if they win out, there's a lot of things that can happen. Same thing with Syracuse. Same thing with teams in the Big Ten, right? I mean, I think, like I told Vin said earlier, Vin, I'm like you. I thought UNC, they have so many 5 stars that when you put it together, forget it, right? Like, they're going to be as good as anybody.
Well, I know they lost some guys from last year, but from what I saw at the end of last year when they decimated Duke in that last game, I said, this team next year, they're going to be a comer, and knowing that Duffy was got to get healthy and, Petramala's even getting better, he can, when we had Dave on, I said, well, I know your son could really shoot. I said, but he's starting to go with the ball a little bit now too. So when that happens, he's really going to be dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, you know what the best thing about Don Petramala is, Vin? I don't know if you know this or Steven, but like, do you see this too? He has many release points.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like just shoot to one spot. He'll overhand bounce it. He'll go low to high. He'll go low to low. Like he is a really good feel shooter. Do you understand what I mean? Like he's a feel shooter. So when he sees it, he feels where he's got to go. He doesn't like a lot of guys are. It's already in their head. I'm going over if I go down lefty in the alley, I'm going low and away. He's a real feel. Like that's where I'm going.
You know what else it is, Rick? It's like you could watch a game and you're watching guys shoot and you're like, okay, this guy took a shot and this guy took a shot. To be honest, every time he's shooting, I'm thinking it could go in.
Yeah, he shot one from 16.
You're not thinking about that with a lot of guys. Every time he's releasing the ball, you're like, all right, this got a chance.
Dude, he put one in from 16 the other day on a Division I goalie. By the way, 16 staring at the goal, 6-on-6 goal. 6x6 goalie staring at it. He buried it from 16.
Yeah. No, he could swing it.
16. Now, I'm going to tell you who I'm partial to, and you guys will love this. I am not because it is because my daughter's there, but I think Stony Brook men's is doing great.
Yeah,
listen, he's a few players away from really being good. Like, he instead of like he's not doing this and this, he's doing this.
Yeah.
And Gallardi's slowly going to get there. And with
the problem, as soon as you start to get, and the guy's like, oh, they
ban me out.
Really good. And then you're finding out he's at Cuse.
Yes, and that's crazy, right?
Georgetown, or he's somewhere else,
When will the portal madness end, do you think? Like,
I don't know.
Will they change the rule? The rule of like, you got to stay a year before you can't just stay a semester.
They have to do something because
that's like I said before when I was in school, it was like you almost they handcuffed you from leaving the school.
Yeah, I mean they did when I was there too. You had to get released. I mean, I get it. Right? Everybody in this day and age, everybody gets a trophy. I do understand that, like, you're injured and you get 5 games. Like, I get that, right? Like, because that was always our biggest fear when I was in college was like, I broke my hand my junior year. And I was like, oh my God, is that my season? Like, I can't redshirt. I'm already played 1 minute. I broke it in the 4th game. I'm like, oh my God. Like, and that's the thing that was scary. But now you get 5 years, right? But rosters are shrinking on the men's side and they're growing on the women's side. And there's NIL that now is starting to come into the sport. And, there's television. There's all those things.
Right now, it's a Wild West show. It really is. I mean, it's like they're going to have to.
Well, listen, we're talking about lacrosse. lacrosse is in terms is a minor sport.
Right.
Yes, very.
Look what's happening in football and
Right.
basketball. I mean, you got guys that are potential pros having to weigh, if they're right on that fine line, they might not ever make a roster. I'm better off staying in school. They'll give me $2 million to stay in school. I might
Yep.
not make a team and I got nothing.
Yep.
If a kid has that much value to a team,
McCord
so
got
it's
1.4 million.
real crazy.
McCord was 1.4 million, I think, in NIL last year at Syracuse. I know he had 800,000, and then
That's the quarterback, yeah.
I mean, did you see the thing about the Miami quarterback who had the car stolen out of his driveway? Did you see the cars?
Oh,
He
that's
had
the guy who transferred from Georgia?
Yeah, the guy. He's in this brand new house that's massive, $2 million home in Miami. He's
I mean,
got
can you imagine?
a Bugatti and a G63 Benz, and the Bugatti got stolen. Like, dude,
And
he's a
they
20.
took the trophy away from Syracuse for
Yes,
for
yes,
somebody stealing.
for a car loan for a hunk of shit. Yup,
Yeah,
for a
it's
beater
crazy.
from Fayetteville
Crazy.
Dodge. Yes,
Yeah,
I
crazy.
mean that's the shit that's crazy to me. These guys, but again, God bless the generation for taking advantage of it, right? Like they're
Yeah,
able to
listen.
do things, right? They're able to make money.
Well, look, let's face it. Let's face it. Come on. A lot of these universities, and mostly I'm talking more football is,
Yeah,
king
they're
because the
making millions.
stadiums, they got stadiums holding whatever, and it is financing. The fact that they thought like, you give a kid a scholarship, what the hell is that? An extra seat in the class and you're feeding them or something, come on, with the money they're generating, when you win, they did deserve, but has it swung too far? That's the question, and how do you monitor it? And is it like we all grew up, we're old enough where when you even the pros, you like the team, you had the nucleus of that team for 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, yeah, oh, we're getting this guy next year. Now every other week I put on ESPN and this guy's leaving, that guy's going here, that middle seat, Jimmy Butler, he leaves Miami, he goes to Golden State,
Mm-hmm.
this guy's
Filters down. It filters down, and that's the shame of it. I mean, listen.
and that's
You
why I
go
say
to
it's more
school.
like it's
Imagine
pickup.
that somebody wants to actually. I mean, lacrosse is different. The kid's going to get a degree if he's out of school. He's getting a good degree. He shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
attend. He shouldn't attend 4 colleges in 5 years. Like that
Yeah,
seems a little bit too much.
I
yeah.
agree. There's no loyalty amongst thieves. It seems like you got to have, like I bleed orange, right? I might be a guy to criticize him at times, but down deep, I bleed orange, and on the men's side, right? And that's just what I do, and
Right.
that's because of the tradition, what it did for me, the times I had, the relationships I made, and I'll be quite frank with you guys. I've lived in Syracuse for 35 years. I rarely go down to Syracuse. Not because it's just because I don't need to be that guy to relive everything, right? I do love to watch those games, and it's great. But I love watching, I love watching lacrosse. I'm like you guys. I know you tune in to everything and you watch kids, and I've coached a lot of kids now, and you try to catch them playing. And we all have relationships. Like I try to catch Charles. I root for Charles at Virginia now. I rooted for him when he was a freshman and he was hammering Syracuse with an overtime goal. I rooted for Charles because of Big Charles and your guys' relationship and meeting him. And I I root for Michael Leo because Big Mike's the best guy in the world. I love Joey because of Joseph and Big Joe and Mary Beth and the girls.
Mm-hmm.
So you start to get those relationships that really drive you to want to watch all the games and see where they are. And you guys being in the Mecca, right? The Mecca, is being on Long Island to so many great players. And what I have learned about Long Island guys is that they always come back. So you guys get a chance to see great players on the daily and be around them, and the coaching that these kids are getting down in that area is second to none when guys want to do it. And it's helping the game grow. And hence Stony Brook. Hence, there'll be a Stony Brook Hopkins game this week on the ladies' side, and there'll be 6,000-7,000 people, 8,000 people at that game.
Nice.
And it'll be awesome. But yeah, Syracuse lacrosse is still like the greatest thing. Paul Clark said it to me. He said, if you're a star at Syracuse, you're a star. It's quite simple.
Right.
Syracuse could be ranked 20th. If you're a star at Syracuse, you're a star.
Yeah.
One thing I do hate is everybody jumps on the Syracuse destroy and they hate when they lose. But you ever notice Syracuse fans don't hate on anybody when, like, they lose? That is one thing. I defended it on Facebook the other day. I never post on social media like that. But I was just like, I'm just curious when someone's going to actually, from Syracuse, a Syracuse fan, is going to destroy Hopkins for losing. It's going to destroy, like, when Syracuse lost to Army last year, guys, if I could count the number of Army alumni that tagged me in social media, like, I'm not saying anything. I appreciate those guys that defend our country. I'm all for it. Like, I appreciate their service. But the truth is, I fell through doors drunk at 3 a.m. before Army games because they were such a joke to me.
Yeah, well, they're not now, though.
But that's what I'm saying.
Now. I mean,
but you're gonna take that generation and dig it in my face, and I'm just like, why would you ever? Like, I'm not even digging at you, but like, then all of a sudden they did that. They go to number one. And by the way, Vin, that's a terrible flip. They go from 1 to not even making the tournament.
Yeah. I never saw that before.
Neither have I, ever.
I said that when they went.
Well, you know what happened, Vin? What happened? Smalley said they were going undefeated for the season.
Yeah. Smalley mush.
That's right. He said they used the mush. Well, we got to give credit where credit's due. He's picking games better than us.
I don't know how he's doing it.
Pick a winner.
Okay,
I don't know how he's doing it.
Let's talk about Smalley for a second here, and he'll love this. So he wears heels, cues. Yeah. Okay. Is there any? Does he have any more?
He's got them all. He's a front runner. Whoever's winning, he's with them.
How does he not win? How does he not have a big hat with 12?
He's all in with St. John's basketball right now.
Yes,
Bobby
and by the way, that's spectacular. The greatest thing was when Pitino said, like, who's raised you? Now that, if another coach said that.
I saw that video, yeah.
Canceled and fired, right? Let's be honest. Canceled and fired. But Rick Pitino, it's, yes, thank God someone said it.
And most of the feedback I saw was positive, like you say. Guys were saying, that's old school coaching,
Old school, baby, old school. Like what was it? La Ling. When he's like, old school, baby, old school, from Carlito's Way. La Ling, old school, baby, old school. Like,
he's got a Carlito's Way reference.
Oh, I got Carlito's
Way in there.
Who's your favorite character in Carlito's Way?
Oh, man, well, he was pretty unbelievable, Pacino, in that, I got to say. He was great. The way.
How about you, Steven?
Sasso.
Oh, 5 minutes after he goes, Charlie, Brigante, how you doing? So, how you doing? Oh, club is great. He goes, I need to come in on 25% on my end. He goes, I don't know, 50, 60, Sal. He's like, that means 100.
Yeah.
My guy is Pachanga.
That's one of those movies.
Who do you like? You like? Oh, yeah.
Pachanga.
That's one of those movies you could watch. Anytime it's on, you could just watch it to the end. You come in halfway, you just watch it to the end.
So first and foremost, the house that they used for Sean Penn, is that near you guys?
Well, wait a minute. Sean.
When you remember when they're on the party.
Is that the party? Is that it?
I think they said that house may be in Kings Point. I think it's Kings Point.
Kings Point?
Yeah, I think it's Kings Point.
I mean, could you, first of all, have you ever had a perm?
No, I never had a perm.
I mean, did you see the hair that Sean Penn had there?
He played a good role in that, too.
He was great.
He was spectacular. As a matter of fact, I'm going to watch that tonight after my clinic.
It'll be on. It's literally on almost every day of the year, I think.
I mean, like, La Ling, like, he got diapers, man. Fucking diapers.
I got diapers. One of the best scenes is when he's in the jail with the mob guy, and he's telling him the lime pit is dug, and all I do is push a button from here.
He's
and
he goes
like
out
this.
And he goes like this. He goes.
Yeah.
Kleinfeld, don't tell me. He said, he grabs the Kleinfeld, and he goes, the lime pit is dug.
acting might be in Rick's future. I
Yeah.
think he could be in a movie.
I could be the fat mobster.
You better call Tony, man.
So, by the way, we got to give a shout out. You
So,
mentioned some guys before, and to say that I think it was all at the same time. I'm not sure, but you, Kiss, and Chad Smith were all playing for the Lizards, right? I mean, not
Chad,
the Lizards, the Saints.
no,
When you
the
played,
Saints. Yup, and then it was
yeah, I
Chad.
don't know if you overlapped, but
No,
all three of those guys. So when we were talking about guys with good hands, you had all three guys that were poles or closed D guys who ended up made a transition into the indoor with a short stick. And Chad was very athletic and had really good
yeah,
hands too.
flat foot runner, but he went fast, man.
Yeah, no,
Like,
Chad was
by the
good. I
way,
like
one of the most hated guys ever by his own teammates.
Chad.
He
Yeah,
would he didn't care. He'd swing at a guy in practice. Like he'd fight a guy. Like
yeah,
him and Roy
he was
Colsey,
tough.
in a pregame at down in Florida before lacrosse got big in Florida. We're playing Yale, and we know we're going to blow out Yale. They're average at best at that time. They're like, I don't know, 25, 24, whatever. And he hacks Roy in warm-ups on like a broken drill, which is a 5-on-4. And they just start brawling in a pregame warm-up. So you have two of the best players in the country in a fight in warm-ups. And Yale is looking down at us, and we're laughing, hooting, and hollering, not even trying to break it up because we want to see it because it has been brewing for weeks. That has brewed for weeks. And I'll never forget it. Finally, Coach Desco yelled at us to get in there and break it up. And then we knew we had beat Yale right there. They were terrified. They were like, but like Chad Smith would fight his own guys constantly. Like, and God
He
bless
was
him.
quiet. He was a quiet assassin. He was kind of
He
quiet.
could score goals, man. He could score goals. You want to talk about a guy who scored goals, Vin? He could score and shoot. And how about when he shot on Bacigalupo in the Final Four and then walked up to him and punched him in the face? He scored. Yeah, you got to find that, Steven. And you should do something like when you want to say hi to the goalie in those posts or something you do. He rips one in 93, walks up to him, and punches him right in the face after he scores on him. Like, this is great. But that was old time, dude. That was how it was. Like, that was accepted, and that was okay. Somebody punches someone in the face now, their parents are going on the internet suing them, trying to tell them, like, you're a bad person. Oh, my God, my little Johnny got punched in the face. Listen, Bacigalupo turned out okay. He's a Hall of Famer and a massive Wall Street hitter. So he did something right, okay?
Yeah.
But Chad punched him square in the face. So that's good.
And he was a pretty good winner at Princeton too.
You think?
Listen,
But that's the way it works.
So Vin, I think we're at shout outs.
Oh, you got a shout out for this week. Go ahead. You go first. You go first, Steven.
You want me to go first? Well,
unless Rick's.
I'm ready. I'll give, my shout out's going to go out to Smalley.
Yeah, give him
that he missed. I know he's a big shot. He goes around, he gets in the boxes, he's courtside, he's at basketball, he's at lacrosse.
I think this is his way of renegotiating his contract with us. He's holding out. He's showing how important he is.
Exactly. So my shout out is going to Smalley. We have to, he's got to be coming back. He's got to be a little bit more in tune. It's like a holdout. It's like, how do you deal with a contract dispute of a holdout? It's unbelievable with this guy.
Did he ask for like bagel chips with butter or something as like a bonus or something?
No.
Who do you got, Vin?
Wow, that's a tough one. Well, I'm going to give a shout out to the St. John's men's basketball team. They made a run through. I think they clinched at the share at least or of the Big East. They'll be going into the Big East tournament. Hopefully they could win that and see where they get seeded for the NCAAs, because they really have brought back a lot of excitement to New York and to the Garden. And, I've gone to a couple games and, you're talking about 19,000 people there and they're the talk of the town right now, and obviously you got a Hall of Fame coach, one of the greatest ever. and he's really brought that team along in 2 years. What he's done, if you watch any of the games, they haven't won this many games in 30 years. They haven't been ranked this high in 25 years.
Oh, they're
That's
back.
a tribute to Pitino's excellence as a coach, and because Stephen and I, Rick, we back in the day, with rest in peace, our brother-in-law Artie Farley, who we used to go to the games with. We sat right behind the bench at Alumni Hall, right, Stephen?
Wow.
Now we're in the second hall. We used to be so
during the glory years, the 84,
time when Chris Mullins and Walter Berry and Mark Jackson and
Walter Berry, one of the best dunkers ever.
Willie Glass, and you go down the whole list. Right, Willie Glass, and then of course Cuse had their greats at that time too.
Washington,
Coleman, Pearl Washington,
David,
there was a bunch. That was, Cycli.
Ronnie Cycli.
We used to
go to all those games. We sat right behind the bench. We had a hookup there from our brother-in-law Artie. Had the hookup. His buddy was the what was he, Stephen? The sports information director, and he was crazy. Our brother-in-law, God bless him, he was so. We would leave. He'd say, "Want to go to the game?" The game would start at 7:30. We'd look. It's like 10 after 7. He goes, "Plenty of time." What? He'd drive on the side of the road. Right, Stephen? How fast would Artie drive? And then pull up to the arena and just shut the car off and leave it there. And we'd walk in the door. I said, Artie, they're going to do that. They won't take it. They won't do it. He was something. And we used to go to those games and we cheered. It was great. Those were great years of watching that. And of course, I was playing for Long Island, and we had a bunch of Virginia guys on the team and all that. They were all in ACC, of course. And I still got the T-shirt somewhere. That year, the Final Four ended up Georgetown, St. John's, Villanova, and I think the fourth team was like Memphis State or somebody like that made it, and then it was an all Big East final with Villanova or Georgetown, and of course, but I had a shirt that said when the Big East smoked Tobacco Road, because in the round of it, all those games were Big East versus ACC teams.
Oh, beat them up.
And all the Big East teams won. They swept them all 3 games. The Big East won. So I was teasing the guys on Long Island that went to the schools down there.
That's interesting that you say that. Before we get Rick's shout out, it's interesting with the conferences. What would you say, Rick, if I said I threw most people would say the 3 best conferences. You could say what order or who you think is the strongest would be the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Ivy League. Most would probably say those are the top 3. And probably most would say over the recent past would say the ACC was has been. But I don't know if the ACC is maybe the strongest at this point this year anyway. What do you think?
I mean, the Big Ten, what I think of the Big Ten is like big, huge guys. Not because the word big, just like they were big, like they're big teams. They went for big, athletic type guys. The ACC, obviously, living here in Syracuse, you forget about Notre Dame because you don't get a chance to watch them that much. You're thinking about the Virginias of the world all the time and the Dukes of the world, because those are the games that they seem to play that are always the biggest on television. It's weird. Notre Dame, Syracuse on TV doesn't feel like Notre Dame, Syracuse Duke or Syracuse UVA. It's weird.
Right.
But I would have to say the sleeper conference of that group is truly the Ivies. No one gives them, they're so close to being in everything now. And that's amazing, because think about the guys you can get. You got to have a kid who's pretty intelligent, right? He's got to be able to hack the academic. And he's, got to be able to date ugly women, because that's how that works. But
and you don't get guys at Ivy.
Yes, yeah.
So you're not dealing with the older kids all the time.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I would think the ACC is the strongest right now because of Notre Dame's prowess right now. UVA is scary. They still have talent. They might have lost games. When they put it together, you don't want a piece of them. Syracuse, we all know, has the talent. UNC, Vin, there it is. That's remember they were a 10 a few years ago and won a national championship.
Definitely.
I mean,
Well, we'll know a little more after this weekend because they have that like ACC Ivy Challenge.
yeah,
Penn and Princeton are going down, and they're playing Duke and Carolina, and
Duke
then
and
they flip
Carolina,
flop.
and
I
then they
think
flip
that's
flop.
this weekend.
I can
Yeah.
tell
So
you, that's those are big, strong athletes, well coached. But yeah, I mean, Steve, I tend to agree with you that those are the conferences, and the ACC has the edge with the Ivies being second, and the Big Ten's lagged a bit, which is weird, right? The Big Ten's lagged a bit. You know, the conference that could surprise everyone if they could it seems like they're just right there, is the Big East, right? Like Villanova gets a ton of talent. They're just always there. Denver,
And
Georgetown,
Denver.
they're always scary, right? Like that's a
yeah,
conference that, like, whoa.
to me, I think those guys they play good enough to lose. Georgetown's been a little better, but Nova, they have their ups. Like they win a big game, they beat Penn State, and then the next week they get crushed. Who beat them? Colgate beat them
Yeah,
bad or somebody.
you beat them bad. And I saw Corrado, actually, Angela's team, Stony Brook played Villanova on that Wednesday before. And he heard I was in the stadium, so he walked out, found me, and we were talking. And at the end of he said to me, he's like, Colgate's really scary to me because they
Yeah,
junk it up crazy. And I don't know how we can handle getting junked up. And apparently, obviously, they didn't handle it very well, getting beat up. But that's the tale of like Jekyll and Hyde. Like they're a
yeah,
Jekyll and Hyde. Like I saw them get destroyed by Rutgers last year destroyed. It wasn't even like a game in a scrimmage. And then all of a sudden they go out and beat, a top 5 team the next week. Like,
yeah.
and
It's
I was like,
crazy.
it's so wild. I think a lot of the programs right now, you have to have consistency. There's a lot of parity, but you got to have consistency, right? The teams that have consistency are those ones that are scary. Like to me, scary consistency right now is Notre Dame. Second is Maryland. Can never count Maryland out, right?
No.
And then the third one for me is actually Denver, right? Like they're always consistent, and consistency can beat a team that maybe is lagging that day, right? But I think the biggest surprise is right now to me UNC, and it was also on the women's side. They started out not really ranked high, like they were 5 or 6, and they're easily top 2. And UNC has proven they can be a top 4 team with no problem, right? They have the talent, and they have the coaching, they have the facility, they have the attitude, and they got the star player in Owen Duffy, right? Owen Duffy, like if you're smart and you play those guys, you limit his touches. That is the only way to make that. And then another thing, you got to make Don Petromala play with his right hand all the time. You can't
Yeah.
let him get to his left. If he gets to his left, he's proven to kill you. Like, I mean, the last 2 games I watched, right, was it Stony Brook? I watched them play. They were in it for a half. Don Petromala started getting to his his left hand, 5 goals. And it's 7
Yeah.
against, right? So 5 and 7 he's going for. He's averaging 6 a game coming into the next one. So, like,
Well, it's like the game I saw against this weekend, Michigan, and one of our favorites, Aiden Mulholland, scored 2 goals in a row. He scored a rip on an extra man, and then he made a nice catch inside with 2 guys, one guy in front of him, one guy behind. One guy fed him. He caught it, put it in. Looked like Michigan was going to win at Duke, and then McAdory comes and same move, gets to his, fakes to his left, comes back to his right, comes around, score, and I'm like, don't they realize the guy's a righty? If he's going to beat you, let him beat you to the left. Don't
yeah,
let him do that.
that's a
How could
big
you
thing.
hit his right hand?
Vin, that's a huge thing. Like I was telling my wife last night, they were talking about like girls, and I was like, they're setting their offenses here at my daughter's school to go to like righties throwing to lefties. Well, there's no lefty. So I I asked who was it? I asked last night a guy I was at dinner with. I'm like, hey, how many goals did you score in your career with your offhand? He's like 3. I'm like,
Yeah,
it doesn't matter how good you are. You're not scoring the majority of your goals with your offhand. It's just not happening. So why set yourself up for that type of failure? Set yourself up for success, right? Like girls lacrosse, I teach my girls never to switch hands. Like just bang it, spike it across your body, lefty.
right.
But like sometimes I see like I'm like, why are you doing that? Like just get deeper, spike it across your body quicker. Like
Right.
just that's what you got to do. But
Yeah.
That's my other shout out. My other shout out
yep,
goes to Angela Beardsley.
we're giving
Angela!
Angela.
Hey,
Hey!
Stony Brook.
Number zero at Stony Brook.
Okay, all right.
Number zero, yeah, she's my hero. But my shout out, if you want it now, because we're getting long in the tooth. I know, I drag it on. I know, I get it. My shout out goes Booch Block to Steven Sombrato, Vinny Sombrato, and the man that isn't here is Smalley. And the reason is, I finally got on this podcast, and it's always fun to see the Sombrato brothers, to play with the Sombrato brothers, and to talk to the Sombrato brothers. And Smalley, I don't know if I want to. Maybe I take my shout out away because he treated me like I was a tuna fish sandwich right now. Like I'm supposed to be his guy. He doesn't. He comes to Cuse. What does he think? I don't have VIP connections that he could get. Like he wasn't sitting on.
And he's probably courtside. You might have been able to get him courtside.
Dude, I would have been courtside. I would have been courtside. He would have said, Beardsley, what are you doing? Beardsley, why Beardsley courtside? Why Beardsley courtside? So I get the shout out to you guys, and I appreciate you having me on. And I know I talk a lot, and I hope I enjoy, but I do love you guys. You have done a lot for me in my career. You have helped me a lot. You helped me get jobs. You helped me play. You taught me things, and you've always been big fans of me, and I appreciate that because I've been a big fan as much back as you've been.
Definitely a big fan of you. We loved having you, playing with you. We wish we had more time to play with you. It's just the age difference, but it would have been nice. We would have loved having you on playing for Long Island. That would have been awesome. You playing with us on Long Island with Pat and, look at that. Can you imagine? Pat, Dito, and Rick.
Did I have a half award?
Did I? Where was that guy? The Invisible Man.
Dude, that's why Southside's winning championships, right? He's the deacon. He's over there.
They're doing a good job. Those guys are doing Tommy Martello, another
Yeah, Tommy Martello, absolutely.
Helping out over there. Listen, we got so many good friends. Timmy Sher coaching. He's at Yorktown now, right?
Yeah, Timmy Sher, Captain USA, Captain America.
Can you imagine those teams battled to a one-goal game? They came back and won Southside against Yorktown last year, and you had Timmy along, Timmy and Dito and Martello coaching, on opposite sides. Great.
Yep, that is pretty fun.
Listen, those guys, kids can learn a lot from those guys. It's just. Sometimes I think, as much as things change, they stay the same. The fundamentals of the game, I mean, you clearly were, really, really talented. I mean, you had something that most guys don't, no matter how long they play the game. But
that's Smalley calling in right now.
No,
he's like, I gotta be in.
That's another groundbreaker, Dougie Hall, who won 2 national championships in Carolina. Dougie Hall, we give Dougie a shout out. Dougie Hall,
give a shout out.
So, but no, you definitely was special. There's great defensemen, and then there's like groundbreaking type guys. There's guys that. Good friend of ours, Chris Kane, who was a 2-time Schmeisser Cup winner. Yep. I mention him a lot because Chris was one of the first guys that you really saw. Not only was a great defender in terms of positioning, but he was a takeaway guy. He was tall. He was one of the first guys really using that over-the-head check and really creating a lot of turnovers. Yep. It morphed into, then I saw it come along, you, Petrov, and guys who – but you had more of a you had like an arsenal. You didn't have just like the one check go-to to take it away. You did, and I see when you teach, I watch some of your videos, you show the kids the positioning of it and the whole bit.
Yeah, you have to keep your feet, Vin. You know that. Like, you can't run with someone you can't take the ball from.
Right. There's times to throw checks and there's times not to throw checks. There's times you're throwing checks out of desperation as opposed to you got the guy right where you want him and you can take chances because it's not even so much of a chance because you got him where you want him. And the likelihood of you dislodging the ball is great. So, I mean, the ability, you talk about all these great Cuse teams and the ones you were on and the national championships you were on, those are great offensive players. But if you probably go back and watch those games, Look at how many easy goals get scored because you guys created turnovers on your end of the field and turned it into a loose situation, a fast break situation, odd man rush down the other way. I'd love to really, if I was a coach, I would have that, be charting that stuff. Like how many goals did we score because there was a turnover and we pushed it down the field,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Ito used to say, when we were playing on the Lizards, he used to say, bad offense makes bad defense for us because you're putting us at a disadvantage because if we turn it over on the offense and they come down in an odd man rush, today these guys are so skilled in the shooters, you get a 4-on-3, a 5-on-4, they're going to score because you don't see a lot of that because the way they micromanage the college game, even if there is a turnover, usually they slow it to clear it and then they get their offensive guys on. And that's why I was saying, with Petro, if it was me, I recruit guys that are two-way guys, and
I'd push pace like crazy. Push pace, create chaos.
Throw it up the side and outrun the guy down, and maybe you catch these guys subbing and you pick up some easy goals. If I was the underdog in games, that's the way, because I'll say the reverse of that.
Yeah.
If I was coaching without a shot clock, then I might try to put the thing in mothballs a little bit, slow it down, limit possessions for the other team. But being there's a shot clock, you really can't do that much. I mean, you could take time, but you're better off pushing pace and doing it the way you want, having your guys on the field and having the guys they don't really want on the field at that point, right?
I think creating chaos is the key to, especially early in the season, because you're usually not disciplined enough early in the season. Your 6-on-6 is not timed up enough. You the one advantage I had at least coaching here is the weather was bad. So instead of standing around and doing 6-on-6 I did a lot of odd man, did a lot of full field, did a lot of so everybody could play so no one was cold. So in the beginning of the years, I would pump teams that they could, but I would be I'm not a counter puncher. I'm giving those punches. The only disadvantage at times you get with that is, can you throttle it back when you need it to be? Because you're so used to throwing punches. Now you got to learn to, guys, can we take the air out of it? And yeah, but the skill levels, you're right, Vin. Where it came from off the shot, get it up and out. Who cares who it is? Push that pace, right? And if you have a long stick that can beat a shorty, I used to always say, honestly, this is a true story, not even me being arrogant. If I had a short stick on me, I thought it was a mismatch. When I had the ball in the offensive end. I had a long stick on me, different story. Short stick, the only guy I didn't like going against was Gary Gate. Because he could grab you, throw it. He was just so good at getting that, and you couldn't get out of it.
Right.
But, I think you got to push pace and create chaos. But that's what I lived in life, right? We lived in that at Syracuse.
Yeah. Well, it was great having you, Rick.
Great having you, Rick. Let's get those fans out watching these games because there's a lot of games to watch this week.
A lot of great games.
Notre Dame, you got Virginia playing Hopkins. There's all kinds of, Vinny mentioned the Ivy games down south. So there's games everywhere. It's really exciting time. They're starting from really Friday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There's tremendous amount of games. Rick, thank you for joining us. We love you. We go way back.
Way back.
We got to get together for a steak, either Brian and Cooper or Prime when you're down on the island.
I'm down. I'm down in clinics. I'm going to coach at Darien in March, so I'll be around in that area, taking the ferry over to watch Ange play and do some trainings and for the youth kids. So I'll be around, brother. I'm a drive away now.
I love it.
Very good.
All right, here we go.
Thanks, brother.
Sign off music, and we will see everybody next week.
Is this nothing?